At 3:04 a.m. on February 12, 2024, Rajesh Patel, 48, owner of a small motel on Route 9 in Trenton, New Jersey, received a call from the police dispatcher. His 19-year-old son, Aaron Patel, had been shot by officers during a check in the parking lot behind the closed Jefferson Plaza shopping center. The caller said the suspect drew a weapon and ignored orders. Officers were identified as Daniel Drake, 43, and Luis Morales, 41. Rajesh arrived about 3:35 a.m. The place was taped off. The body had already been taken away. Only a large blood pool remained. Detective Michael Harris, 51, stated the standard version. The suspect resisted, acted aggressively, reached for his waistband. According to him, both officers fired. When Rajesh asked if a weapon had been found, Harris confirmed, saying a black handgun was near the victim's right side. No other information followed. Rajesh immediately questioned the report. Aaron was a history student at Mercer County College, planned to become a teacher, worked part-time at the motel, avoided any conflicts, and had no record. The family never owned firearms. Nothing in his son's behavior matched a description of aggression. At the morgue later that morning, Rajesh identified the body. The preliminary report listed 5 gunshot wounds, 3 to the chest and 2 to the abdomen. The shots came from above and close range. Rajesh noticed red marks on the right wrist, resembling handcuff pressure. The coroner answered that all details would appear in the final report after autopsy. 2 days later, police held a briefing. A photo of the alleged gun was shown, but its serial number was unreadable. Harris said the fingerprint analysis was pending. Rajesh asked when results would be available. Harris avoided a clear date. Collecting Arun's things, Rajesh found in his backpack a blue folder with printed articles about missing people in the city over 20 years. Many lines were highlighted. On top lay an article dated June 2008 about a missing 19-year-old student, Brittany Holmes. In the margin, Aaron had written, "Patrol car number 47, last stop Oak Street Motel." Why does the report say different? Rajesh realized the note referenced official records. Checking the phone, Rajesh saw 3 calls to the Trenton Police Department Internal Affairs Unit on February 10th and 11th. Each call lasted 7 to 12 minutes. When he asked Harris about them, Harris replied that no such calls existed in department logs. The contradiction became Rajesh's first documented irregularity. Reconstructing the timeline, Rajesh verified motel footage. Aaron left the parking lot at 11:12 p.m. on February 11th in his gray Honda Civic. A college roommate later said Aaron planned to meet someone about research, giving no further detail. Police listed his wallet, phone, backpack, and a gun allegedly found near the body. The gun was not on the car inventory list. The funeral took place on February 15th at a Hindu temple in Hamilton Township. Dozens attended. Outside, Officer Drake stood by a patrol vehicle smoking and watching the family from a distance. Morales was not present. Rajesh noticed Drake's calm expression, not sorrowful, but observing. Priya Patel, 45, remained unable to speak. The family had moved to the United States 25 years earlier, worked low-wage jobs, and bought the small motel after years of saving. Their son's education had been the purpose of that effort. Deepak Mehra, 50, owner of the nearby gas station, silently stayed next to Rajesh. His short comment was limited. "Something's wrong with this story." That evening, Rajesh received the incident summary. The timeline read, "Call at 2:53 a.m. Officers arrived 2:57. Shots fired 3:01. Scene secured 3:05. The reason for the stop was listed as suspicious vehicle. No independent witnesses were mentioned. The document stated, "Body cameras active." Harris said footage could not be released during internal review. No release date was provided. In March 2024, 3 weeks after Aaron's death, Rajesh Patel hired attorney Sandra Ortiz, 39, a civil rights specialist based in Newark, to file a wrongful death claim against the Trenton Police Department. Ortiz began by requesting complete access to the investigation file, forensic data, dispatch recordings, and camera footage from the night of February 12th. The department provided only partial materials. Several video segments were marked unavailable due to data corruption. The official narrative now suggested that Aaron had been under the influence and displayed erratic behavior. 2 roommates gave contradictory statements. The first, a student named Peter Logan, said Aaron had acted nervous and secretive in the weeks before the shooting. The second, Jason Wu, initially said Aaron was focused on his research and never used drugs, but later amended his account to say he had noticed anxiety. Ortiz later discovered through court records that Logan's pending fine for a drunk driving offense had been dismissed a week after his testimony. Ballistic data confirmed that the weapon found near Aaron's body had been fired. Police stated that this confirmed the officers' fear for their lives. Ortiz retained an independent firearms expert, retired crime scene analyst Richard Boyd, 62, to review the report. Boyd concluded that while the weapon had discharged a bullet, the residue pattern and lack of grip trace indicated it was fired previously, not at the scene. He noted that all identifiable fingerprints on the grip were partial and smudged, inconsistent with an active struggle. The trajectory of the fatal shots, calculated from autopsy data, showed an angle from above to below the sternum, consistent with the victim being on his knees. Ortiz submitted Boyd's findings to the court. Judge Alan Berger ruled the conclusions inconclusive and declined to include them as substantive evidence, stating they did not materially contradict the official investigation. Officers Daniel Drake and Luis Morales both testified. Their statements matched almost identically. Both said they observed a lone male sitting in a parked car, approached to question him, and that he suddenly reached for his waistband. Both described identical dialogue and timing. When Ortiz asked if they had communicated to align their testimonies, both denied coordination. Drake repeated that he feared for his life. The proceeding shifted when Ortiz presented a new witness. A homeless man named Raymond Ellis, 52, known locally as Ray, came forward after seeing coverage of the shooting on a community bulletin board. He had been sleeping in bushes about 40 meters from the parking lot that night. Under oath, he said he awoke to voices. He heard a young man shouting, "Please don't, I won't say anything, I'll delete everything," followed by 5 consecutive gunshots. He insisted there was no earlier shouting or warning. The prosecution discredited him immediately. They presented his criminal history, 2 arrests for petty theft and 1 for public intoxication, and labeled him an unreliable witness. Under cross-examination, Ellis admitted he had consumed alcohol that night. His statement was struck from the record as non-credible. Following the rejection of Ellis's testimony, Ortiz focused on Aaron's research folder. It had been returned from evidence storage after the internal review concluded. She organized its contents chronologically. The earliest documents were public reports on missing persons. At the center of the folder was the case of Brittany Holmes, a student from Trenton Community College, who disappeared on June 17, 2008. The police file on Holmes classified the event as voluntary disappearance. The final report stated that patrol officers transported her from a house party to her residence at 1:30 a.m., and that she was last seen entering her apartment complex. No follow-up was conducted after she was presumed to have left town. Aaron's handwritten notes inside the folder detailed his findings. The original patrol log from car number 47, accessed through university archives, listed the last stop as Oak Street Motel, 1:47 a.m. The final version in official police records had been corrected to delivered to residence 1:30 p.m. The revision date on the record matched the following day, June 18, 2008. Aaron had written a margin note beside the change. Edited after report signed. Why? He had also annotated several names. Sergeant Frank Carroll, listed as shift supervisor in 2008. Officers Daniel Drake and Luis Morales, both recorded as patrol trainees at that time. Aaron's last page summarized: homes taken by number 47, no record of return. Report falsified. Connected officers still active. Ortiz confirmed through public records that both Drake and Morales joined the department in 2007. In 2008, they were assigned to overnight patrol duties in the Jefferson District. Patrol car number 47 was in service on the night Brittany Holmes vanished. These facts established a historical link that no one had previously examined. By late April, after weeks of hearings, the civil court dismissed Rajesh's claim. The verdict read, "The officers acted in accordance with department policy. The use of lethal force was justified." The judge noted that the victim's alleged drug possession and erratic conduct supported the perception of threat. Rajesh sat motionless in the courtroom as the decision was read. Ortiz placed the closed folder in front of him, containing his son's highlighted papers. He saw the same headline his son had marked weeks before: "Student Brittany Holmes missing, last seen entering patrol vehicle." By May 2024, 3 months after the verdict, Rajesh Patel stopped managing the Oak Street Motel. He transferred operations to his nephew, who handled daily bookings and maintenance. Rajesh spent most days in his son's room, sitting among folders, printed articles, and handwritten notes. The curtains stayed closed. His meals came irregularly. The ledger where he once wrote down guests' names now contained lists of dates, badge numbers, and patrol car assignments from old city records. Priya tried repeatedly to return him to normal life. She suggested visiting relatives, asked him to reopen the motel office, urged him to move forward. He refused, answering briefly that nothing mattered until the truth is written down. After several arguments, she left for her sister's apartment in Edison, saying she could not live in a place where every wall reminded her of Arun. Rajesh remained alone. One afternoon, Deepak Mehra, his longtime friend from the neighboring gas station, came unannounced. He found Rajesh surrounded by papers on the floor, printouts of police rosters, archived patrol logs, and highlighted names. Rajesh handed him the folder his son had built. He explained that Brittany Holmes, missing since 2008, had been last seen entering patrol car number 47. The same 2 officers who wrote that report, Drake and Morales, were the ones who shot Arun 17 years later. Deepak suggested finding people who had known Brittany. Using a social media search, he located a man named Robert Pierce, listed as her former boyfriend in 2008. Rajesh contacted him through a direct message. 2 days later, Pierce agreed to a video call. He was now 34, living in Delaware. Pierce recounted that on June 17, 2008, Brittany attended a small party at a rented house near the Trenton campus. Around 1 a.m., she was heavily intoxicated, unable to stand. He called the local police non-emergency line to ask for assistance in taking her home, a practice then common in small college towns. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car arrived. 2 young male officers helped Brittany into the back seat. Pierce remembered the vehicle number clearly, 47. He assumed they had driven her home. She never returned. According to Pierce, he reported her missing the next afternoon. Detectives told him she had likely left voluntarily. Weeks later, he moved away, convinced she was dead. When Rajesh showed him photos of the officers involved in Aaron's case, Pierce identified them as the same men who had taken Brittany that night. Their appearance had changed with age, but was recognizable. Rajesh wrote down the timeline. The pattern was now complete. Brittany Holmes was last seen alive in the company of patrol officers, Drake and Morales, assigned to car number 47. 17 years later, the same officers killed his son, who had been investigating her disappearance. The sequence could not be coincidence. Rajesh concluded that Brittany had been taken to the Oak Street Motel, assaulted, and killed. Sergeant Carroll, the shift supervisor, had signed off the altered report that moved the time from 1:47 to 1:30, eliminating the motel stop. Rajesh and Deepak debated their next step. Rajesh decided to go directly to Detective Michael Harris, the senior investigator who had handled Aaron's shooting. He entered the precinct on June 3rd with his son's research folder in hand. He requested that Brittany Holmes's case be reopened, citing new testimony and matching officer names. Harris listened in silence, then told him to leave before he made things worse for himself. When Rajesh refused, Harris warned that further harassment of police personnel could affect his immigration status. The tone shifted from professional to threatening. As Rajesh turned to leave, he caught Harris's expression. It was not one of irritation, but of unease. The reaction confirmed that Harris was aware of the connection and wanted it buried. Rajesh left the precinct without responding further. That night, around 11:30 p.m., Rajesh received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the line was male, distorted by a muffled tone, possibly a voice changer. The message was brief. Your son didn't understand when to stop. Go back to your India while you're alive. The line went dead. Rajesh documented the call time and number, but found it registered as unknown on his mobile record. The next morning, June 4th, Rajesh drove toward the supply store on Route 206. Approximately 5 miles from the city limits, a large white delivery truck crossed the center line and struck his vehicle head-on. The truck continued without stopping. Witnesses later described partial letters on the side of the truck, but no license number. Rajesh was airlifted to St. Francis Medical Center with a concussion, broken left arm, and fractured ribs. Police labeled the collision a hit and run and listed the suspect driver as unidentified. No follow-up report was filed beyond the initial accident summary. When Rajesh asked about roadside cameras, he was told none covered that section of road. Deepak visited him in the hospital the next day. Rajesh, bandaged and restrained to prevent movement, recounted the call from the previous night. Deepak remained silent for several minutes, then said quietly, "They killed your son, and now they tried to kill you." There are no legal ways. The system protects itself. Rajesh looked at the ceiling, his voice weak from medication. "What should I do?" Deepak asked. Rajesh did not answer immediately. He stared at the fluorescent light above him, imagining the last moments of his son's life, the downward shots, the plea that a witness had recalled. "Please don't. I won't say anything." Rajesh Patel was discharged from the hospital on July 1st, 2024. His left arm was still in a brace, and movement remained limited, but he refused rehabilitation. Deepak Mehra picked him up and drove him back to the empty motel. The office lights were off. Weeds along the lot had overgrown. Rajesh said little. A week later, Deepak introduced him to an acquaintance who supplied firearms without paperwork. Rajesh bought a 9mm pistol and ammunition. From that moment, his purpose changed from inquiry to execution. He wrote 5 names on a sheet of paper: Drake, Morales, Harris, Carroll, Stevens. 5 individuals directly tied to his son's death and to the 2008 falsified report. He studied their schedules, addresses, and routines. Morales, he decided, would come first, the weakest, most fearful, the one who might talk. For 2 weeks, Rajesh followed Morales. The officer lived in a small rented duplex on East Hanover Street, often shopping after work. On the evening of July 19th, Rajesh waited in the supermarket parking lot. When Morales exited carrying groceries, Rajesh approached him between parked cars, his hand shaking. He fired once, hitting Morales in the shoulder. As the officer turned and fell, Rajesh fired again into the chest. Morales died before emergency services arrived. Rajesh left the scene calmly, abandoning the gun's spent shell casings in the lot. Surveillance footage later captured a blurred figure leaving in a dark sedan. The next name was Officer Jacob Stevens, the evidence technician who had found the handgun at Aaron's crime scene. Rajesh located his address through a public record search. For several nights, he waited near the officer's driveway. On July 26th, when Stevens returned from a late shift, Rajesh used a taser to incapacitate him, then dragged him into his car. He drove to an unfinished construction site outside Trenton. Under threat, Stevens admitted that Detective Harris had paid him $5,000 to plant a weapon near the victim's body and record it in the evidence log. Stevens said the gun had been taken from the property room weeks earlier. After the confession, Rajesh shot him once in the head. The body was found the following morning by workers arriving at the site. Rajesh's third target was Sergeant Frank Carroll, retired but living locally. In 2008, Carroll had signed the revised report stating that Brittany Holmes was delivered home. Rajesh forced entry into Carroll's house on August 3rd, shortly after midnight. Carroll awoke to a gun at his temple. He tried to explain that he had only corrected a few lines and didn't know the girl was dead. Rajesh listened without emotion and fired once. The wound was fatal. By then, local law enforcement realized that a single perpetrator was killing officers connected to older internal cases, but they had no suspect name. Detective Michael Harris became the next focus. After Carroll's death, Harris took unpaid leave and arranged for private security. Rajesh spent days watching his movements. Eventually, he discovered that Harris met a woman every Thursday evening at a motel near the city limits. On August 15th, Rajesh broke into the room through a rear window before Harris arrived. When Harris entered, Rajesh aimed the gun and ordered him to sit. He handed Harris a notebook and pen, telling him to write a full account of what had happened in 2008 and again in 2024. Harris wrote for nearly 20 minutes. The statement, later recovered by investigators, detailed that officers Drake and Morales had taken Brittany Holmes to the Oak Street Motel after the party, intending to calm her down. They assaulted her. During the encounter, she resisted, and Drake strangled her. Harris, then a detective, helped dispose of the body in a wooded area and changed the report. He admitted that when Aaron Patel began contacting Internal Affairs, he instructed Stevens to fabricate evidence and authorized lethal action during the traffic stop to contain exposure. After signing the document, Harris begged for his life. Rajesh shot him once in the stomach and left the room. Harris died before emergency responders arrived. The final name on Rajesh's list was Daniel Drake. The department increased his protection detail, but Drake still attended Harris's funeral on August 22nd. Rajesh observed from a distance, noting the pattern of security deployment. When the ceremony ended and officers dispersed, Drake walked alone toward his vehicle. Rajesh positioned himself on a hill approximately 200 meters from the cemetery entrance with a scoped rifle. He fired once, striking Drake in the back. Drake fell near the car, bleeding but alive. Rajesh approached, holding the same folder his son had once carried. Drake, gasping, said, "Your son screamed and cried when he died." Pathetic. Rajesh fired 3 more rounds into his face. He placed Harris's handwritten confession and Aaron's research folder beside the body. Within hours, investigators traced license plate fragments from cameras near the cemetery to Rajesh's vehicle. Patrol cars were dispatched to the Oak Street Motel. At 7:40 p.m., police surrounded the building. Rajesh sat in the office, holding his son's framed photo. Through the window, he saw the flashing lights. He walked outside with the pistol in his hand. Officers shouted commands to drop the weapon. Rajesh stood still, looking upward. Witnesses later reported he appeared calm. His final words were directed to the photograph clutched in his other hand. "For you, Beta." He raised the gun. The officers opened fire simultaneously. 10 rounds struck him. Rajesh died at the scene.